Order the meeting of the Finance Committee. It is Tuesday, August 13th. We have a quorum present and we are certified and compliant with the open meetings laws. Public comment up front? No? All right. Nobody online for such, so we'll go to communications and presentations, which I don't think we have any presentations, but communications. All right, nobody jumping at that, so then we'll move into, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the July 23rd finance meeting. Greg, motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any edits or questions about the minutes? All right, everybody's good on that. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, minutes are accepted. Into the business at hand. We got some reports in there, Dave?
Yeah, these are all just informational for you. Our net new construction came in at 3.54%, which was a record for us. And I actually went through and figured out where we ranked with the other Dane County communities, and we were 8th. So compared to where we have been, it's good to see that we're growing faster than some of our counterparts. The equalized value is 4.33% increase. So that means the mill rate's going to drop again, not substantially like it did last year. But the math will just cause it to go down. With that said, we don't know what the debt levy is going to be yet for 25, so it could bring the mill rate flat. But at least when you're talking mill rate, it's going to be a slight decrease probably. Any questions on those two topics?
Dave, in the equalized value, can you just do something a little brief to talk about between like 21 and 25 projected, why that kind of hiccup is in there?
That large one for the prior year?
Yeah.
That's just because property values took off around the state.
Yep, okay. Just for everybody to know why we're on that roller coaster like that.
And based upon when I looked at the detail, the state dropped and Dane County dropped. We dropped a little bit more, but I'm not surprised. It's hard to keep that kind of increase going each year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, nobody, any questions on either one of those two reports? You're going to detail the department requested budget, or is that just,
again, just informational
FYI?
only for you.
Okay.
We're very early in the budget process. That's my requested budget to the mayor. Obviously, we've got to go through a lot of things, but you're my oversight committee, so I wanted to kind of give you a heads up.
Yep.
We did have an increase compared to prior year. Number one, didn't catch it, but I forgot to budget health and dental for the assistant finance director. And to increase the pool of applicants when we re-advertised, we bumped these wages up, got a better pool of candidates, and attracted a great candidate.
All right, yeah, because while I was looking at it, when I saw that the health insurance one come up, I was like, whoa.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense.
So that's all I have on the reports. Anybody have any questions at all?
Okay, and we'll roll into the resolutions. We've got a bunch of time sensitives on there, so we'll get through those. First one up is the irrevocable letter of credit, LOCM Properties.
This is actually the gingerbread house, but for both the LOCM Properties and like it says, Gingerbread House. Blue Lake Properties is the apartment building on the east side of 51. Both entities have requested the return of those line of credits. And so because we had developer agreements, we just are taking it to council, requesting to give those back. Discussion internally is that future developer agreements are going to be letting that be done internally by staff for releasing it rather than take it back to the council every time. So
Right.
Rick is aware of that for the next developer agreement that he's working on. Other than that, I didn't have anything to bring up with either one of them, other than the fact that they're labeled time sensitive. It doesn't cost us anything to hold on to them, but the other party pays fees. So if we can reduce their costs and be a good partner with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. With the Blue Lake Properties apartments on there, so they have the two buildings on there, and they're doing a third. Is it Blue Lake that's doing a third building, or their second
Yeah, they're
phase?
building another
Okay.
building. This relates to the first building.
Oh, got it. So there's just first building, and they'll have a line or a letter of credit for
The
the next
second,
step.
assuming that planning is requesting one.
Got it. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions on these two letters of credit? We'll take them separately, but.
That's
anyway,
fine.
Yep. But, so I'd entertain a motion for the first letter of credit for LOCM properties.
I'll move to approve.
All right, moved by Patrick, second by Greg. 130, yes. Okay. Any other questions on that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one to council. Next, a motion to approve the R-131 letter of credit for Blue Lake Properties.
Move to recommend approval to council.
All right, motion by Lisa, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ozzy. Any other questions on this letter of credit? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one up to council also. Next up is the resolution 132 to consolidate the senior center special revenue funds.
The senior center currently has 4 special revenue funds, 3 of which don't have a lot of activity, and we've had these funds since at least 2007. So the auditors have to have separate counts in the financial statements. They have to do testing for materiality on each fund. So my recommendation is that we combine those funds together, similar to what we did for others in 22 and 23. It's listed as a time sensitive just because we're in budget season. I'm assuming that it's going to pass and the budget's being developed with that assumption. I'll reverse it if it doesn't pass, but it's making it easier for us going forward as we're working through the budget.
Greg?
Yeah, Dave, I know that they have a special fund that's set aside for money that's designated for specific projects, by, contributions from citizens or from their wills or whatever.
Right.
That's completely separate from what this is, right?
No, they're there. We just have separate departments. Each fund will basically be a department in the combined fund. And just like the general fund, the mayor, the city clerk, finance, public works, they're all separate departments. We can track all the activities separately.
Okay, but if somebody has designated money to a specific project, that would have to be kept separate somehow, right?
Yes, and
You
we
just
can track that.
Do that with notations? Okay,
It's part of the year-end process, yep.
okay.
Lisa?
Sort of along the same line, and I think you said there's a way to delineate, but I was wondering about the seniors in need, since those are folks who as I understand, may have some financial situation. So I guess what I'm wanting to make sure is that other programming wouldn't cut into that for those special needs folks. So that's the same
Correct.
thing. It's got a little line item or something, or?
All these funds, the fund balances getting combined together. We've got the separate departments to track the revenues and expenditures, and then we'll have a separate fund balance accounts for each of the department or departments, depending on the need, to track it. So again, it's no different than the general fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's it's a 3-digit 5 and 5. Is that right? Your account designation?
3, 5, and 5, and then if we have a project number, which we're
Yep.
trying to get away from, that's 8 digits, I believe.
Okay. So then it'd be the second series of 5 digits is where we'll designate, or where all this gets
Correct.
bucketed up into. So
And just for clarity, the 2024 adopted budget has to be increased by that dollar amount, but that's not, there's not new money needing to be generated.
Correct.
It's just to
It's a
make room for the
transfer in and
transfer.
transfer out, which
Yep.
is an expense.
Yep, perfect.
yeah, just as we're cleaning up the accounting, or simplifying, not cleaning up, simplifying. All right, anybody have any other questions on this movement? All right, then I would entertain a motion to recommend it.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council.
All right, motion by Ozzy, is there a second?
Second.
Greg or Lisa, take your pick. Flip a coin.
Ladies' choice.
All right, any further questions on this? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that to council. Next up is the resolution 133 to close out Fund 236, tied to the tree commission.
Now that the tree commission is no longer here and it's a tree advisory committee, we're closing, or the proposal is to close the tree commission separate fund. In other words, getting rid of another fund in the financial statements, moving it into the general fund. The Public Works Department and the forester were approving of this, and working with Nicole Marie, we've even moved other things out of the streets area into the forestry area, so we got a better understanding of what is the forestry cost for the city. And so then I've already talked to the city forester. He was requesting information on how that fund balance of less than $6,000 is being handled. Same exact thing. We'll have in the general fund the Public Works assigned fund balance, just like we have for police and senior center and everything else.
So did the ARPA money get delegated, and will it go into this fund?
The ARPA money stays in the ARPA fund, so that 20,000, I believe it was, will be an expenditure in the ARPA fund, because we need that for federal tracking. I don't want to bury it in with anything else.
So then they'll just request as they need those funds?
Correct.
Okay.
And this item, we've again got, for time sensitive, just we're in the middle of budget. It's easier for us if we do it now rather than waiting 2 weeks to see what the council decides to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think to the flip side of this, with a little bit more clear accounting on what the urban forest management things are, that this could be a nice piece to add into a sustainability and or environmental accountability report if the city decides that. So something that we'll be able to track and brag about, hopefully. Any other questions on this fund closing? All right, I'll entertain a motion for the resolution. Moved by Greg, is there a second? Second by Patrick. Any other questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one to council. Next up is the resolution 134, a waiver agreement, AARM Group, Stoughton.
AARM Group is the entity that runs Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen here in town. This waiver agreement was actually requested by Stafford Rosenbaum because they have another client who another attorney works on that deals with the Small Business Association Administration loans. So they needed approval from us that they could work on that project. So this is just allowing that attorney to work on AARM, our attorney to work on our things. There's a wall inside, they'll never work together, but as I said, the Stafford Rosenbaum had requested this. They actually did the attachment, obviously, and Rick went through and modified the draft resolution as appropriate. Time sensitive, just because that other entity can't do anything till we give permission.
All right, that's kind of fairly standard we've had a couple of these waivers come up already so far this year, so this one is, although slightly different flavor, because it'll be two attorneys in the same firm.
The other two have been for Town of Dunn.
Yeah. All right, any questions on this waiver or objections? Otherwise, I entertain a motion to approve or recommend to council.
So moved.
Motion by Lisa, is there a second? Second. Second by Ozzy. Any last questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that to council. Next is Resolution 135, proposal for site investigative services, Stoughton Manufactured Gas Plant, sediment assessment.
If you remember, True North was the consultant who worked with us for the remediation plan on the Department of Public Works building, the old building. Now we finally got updated information from the DNR about what we need to test for on the other portion of the site. And so this is their proposed budget for actually working through the testing, hiring the appropriate company to do it. And given that we've been trying to work on this remediation for 5-6 years, we'd like to get this going forward as soon as possible.
So I'll just add a little bit. So back in March, our engineers were doing some work in the river for the river project, and they came across some contamination, and we received a letter in May from the DNR saying, hey, you know, your engineers found a material, needs to be cleaned up. I think it was like May 23rd or 25th. So within the last week or so, we finally were able to get our consultants together with the DNR and really determine what testing we need to do. So that is what this proposal is for. Once they do the testing, then, you know, it'll determine what next steps, if any, might be necessary to clean out the contamination in the river. We believe the source is from this manufacturing plant coal manufacturing plant that was near where the Public Works building was years ago. We don't know if ultimately we would be responsible if any cleanup cost is necessary or what that would look like because of the chain of title to the property. But for now, we just are asking to have the money authorized to get the testing done and figure out what the next steps would be.
Remember about how far, so this is like shoreline, river shoreline, and then is it out to center of the river that was their test area?
That sounds about right. So if you look along the riverbank where we had completed the work, we stopped where we got to that section. So that's kind of the area from there down into the river that there's a concern of what might have leached down there.
Hey, Tim.
And
Sorry. Hey, Tim, in the packet, I believe there's a map that shows the testing locations.
Perfect.
okay, yeah, I can pull that up right
there it is.
here. Do you want to continue, Brett?
Sure. Yeah, so I think the purple dots are the different testing locations that they're going to be doing and taking soil samples back to the lab and seeing what type of contamination is there. And then from that, they'll give us a report that will kind of outline the remediation of that site, if any, and give a recommendation to us to move forward with. That also go to the DNR.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that. I apologize. The way my screen works, I can't see you if I'm using a full screen. I have to flip back to a smaller version of the share.
Sure.
So, feel free to jump in at any time on this stuff if I don't see your hand up or something.
Yep, no problem.
And Brett, they're just looking for or testing for some of the aliphatic hydrocarbons, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of the holdup, is to understand from the DNR what they want to look for and the scope of the investigation. And so we waited for, it feels like months. True North waited to give us a proposal to get word from the DNR what type of testing they needed to do and the scope or the footprint of the testing location. So it's been a little bit of a drawn out process, to be honest.
Yeah, it was actually quicker than it might have been because coincidentally we had already scheduled a meeting with True North regarding the RDA site, and the letter we received from the DNR in May came the day before we were scheduled to meet with True North.
Perfect.
So we immediately forwarded to them so they could begin the conversation back in May. It's taken to this point in order to get the actual proposal. But we're thankful we have it. We want to, get things taken care of so we can continue to move forward on all of our projects.
And the last thing I'll add too is that it's important that we get going on this because time is ticking and we're going to get into the cold weather months soon. So it's important that we move forward with this so that True North can get a subcontractor to do the in-river testing.
Although maybe we won't have an ice river winter. We'll see.
Yeah, if it's anything like last winter, we won't.
Right. You have a question, Lisa?
Just a suggestion on the resolution, the title, it might be helpful just to spell out the manufacturing gas plant in that proposal on the first line in the resolution, just for clarity. I had to dig around for it to get it figured out a little bit myself, so.
Yeah, I think we've got it in our agenda here, and I think it's in the agenda on
Is manufactured,
council. Yeah.
as opposed to manufacturing, so
I
maybe
see.
just that
Yeah.
proposal, first line, just to clarify it would be great.
Sure.
I think it's important to note if it does go to council that, although it was the Public Works site, and Dave, you alluded to this, the contamination was not from Public Works. So it was the gas plant from, 100 years ago.
Yeah. So for Patrick and Tanya that haven't seen, how, we've worked on this site for a while on its contamination levels. So they kind of worked on testing from where the Public Works garage was and kind of worked down toward the riverbank in there. So this is just the extension thereof, because the watershed runs right straight down that and out into the river. So this is where we're at. All right, any other questions on the proposal? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve or recommend to council.
I'll make a motion to recommend to council.
Motion by Ozzy, is there a second? Second by Greg. Any other questions on the proposal? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Or any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one to council. Next up is ordinance 17 to amend sections 64-5 through 64-7 of Code of Ordinances related to special assessments and create section 64-17.
Brett, would you like
Yep.
to start on this one?
Yeah, so every year since I've been here in Stoughton, assessments is always a hot topic, and this year the alders challenged the Public Works Committee with going through the ordinances when it comes to assessing for sidewalk, curb and gutter, retaining walls, driveway aprons, and essentially eliminating some of those assessments. So as you scroll through the packet here, Tim, if you can go down just a little bit farther, stop right there. I did reach out to other communities to see what they did. And so especially communities around Stoughton that are like size. As you can see, sidewalk, a lot of them do charge 50% assessed cost for sidewalks, just like we do. There are quite a few that don't. Also, if you notice, Verona, although they do have assessment of 100% for sidewalks, they have not assessed for sidewalk in 20 years. So when it comes before council, essentially they opt to not assess for it. But they do, nobody assesses for curb and gutter except for us at 50%. Aprons, we assess 100%. The only other community that assesses 100% is Fitchburg. And then Middleton's 50%. And then also Middleton, if there's any grade changes, they do not assess for aprons. Retaining walls, we're the only ones that assess for retaining walls that abut the sidewalk or are abutting the right of way. And nobody assesses for roadway costs. So you can see that, you know, compared to other communities around us, like size, we far and away assess for more things than anybody else. So we can scroll down a little bit, Tim. So here's a comparison. So the Public Works Committee recommended to Finance that we, for the sidewalks, repair and replacement, that we go from 50% down to 0. And then new installation or infill type sidewalk, this is not development, but any infill sidewalks, we go from 50% to 0. Retaining walls, repair and replacement of existing retaining walls, go from 100% to 0. New installation, which of course does not include development, go from 100% down to 0. Curb and gutter for new installation from 100% to 0. Repair and that's for infill, excuse me. And then repair and replacement of current curb and gutter from 50% to 0. Can you scroll on this a little bit, Tim? There you go, thanks. Then driveway aprons and carriage walks would still be assessed at 100%. And Lisa, you're on the Public Works Committee, but the discussion was that aprons and carriage walks are for the sole use of that property, whereas like sidewalk, anybody in the community can really use that. It does use that. The curb and gutter is really for stormwater conveyance and to hold the shape of the road. whereas aprons are really to serve that parcel. So here's the costs. So 2023 for everything, for all assessments, 397,000. In 2024, 439,000, and then 2025, 367,000. Now, if we revise that for the taking out curb and gutter and sidewalk and only assess for aprons in 2024, so this year would be $312,246 that the city would have to come up with, and then projected for next year would be $307,000. So that's the brass tacks, if you will. I guess at this point, if there's any questions, we can discuss that. There's also some edits in the ordinances. There's 3 different ordinances that pertain to this that we can discuss if you'd like.
Technically 4.
Or, okay, 4. A new one too, yeah. Yep.
How are you gonna explain this to all the people that have been assessed this over the years in the past? It doesn't look good. All of a sudden, we're gonna drop it for, to me, if it was me, I'd be rather upset, but. And what's a carriage walk or?
Yep, so that's a small, sidewalk between the actual sidewalk and the curb and gutter. You don't see that a whole lot anymore, and that is an optional thing that they can choose to remove. It's in their terrace. Back in the day, they would park their horse and carriage along the street and get off at the carriage walk, and then walk to their home.
For Ozzy, for example, you know where the Luke Stoughton house is on Page Street? Okay, that carriage walk there, there's a step going up from the street up to the sidewalk.
Lisa?
Yeah, I think to answer the question is, if the council ultimately desires to move forward, you have to basically draw the line and move forward at some point, and it's just kind of the luck of the draw. I think there was a provision in there for aprons, if I remember, Brett.
As far as
A 5-year.
Oh, yep. So there's that's the part of the new a newly created ordinance. It'd be section 6417. Property owners would pay 100% of the cost of new driveway aprons, and then if there's a grade change, so a full reconstruct of a roadway, there it is. So that's not the right one. So if you can go back to go back to the resolution. Step down a little bit. Bottom of this page, I believe, or the next page. There it is. Yep, 6417. So 6417A. So that's where the owner would pay 100% for a normal apron. If we're doing, let's say, a pulverization job where there's no grade changes and the apron is defective or does not meet the current city code, we would replace that at 100% of the cost for the property owner. If there's a grade change in 6417B, so we're doing a full reconstruct and the grade of the road changes, the profile of the road changes, we have to redo the apron, it'd be 100% the city's cost. And now 6417C, if the property owner put a new apron in within 5 years, and it's in good condition and meets our current spec, then the city would pay 100% of the cost of the apron.
So I think what we're trying to do is, if we want to move forward, we're trying to, say, okay, from this day on, we have to start somewhere. But if somebody recently invested money in the apron, then we would help offset that cost, and we would also work toward communicating our 5-year plan, so hopefully people wouldn't replace their apron only to have it tore up 3 years later to do their street construction. So that's kind of where we're trying to go. The downside is that if we don't special assess, then we have to borrow the full amount of money and do the work and ultimately, pay back that debt, or we have to reduce the number of projects that we do. So those are kind of the pros and cons, and then there's kind of a side issue we can talk to after the fact, and that would be the fund balance. But maybe we should at least focus on the policy decision first, and then depending on how that goes, we can discuss, what we would potentially do with the fund balance if we were to move forward with the change.
Lisa?
So I am on Public Works, and I did vote in favor of this because I know, for one, it puts staff, they spend a lot of time, and it puts them in a very difficult decision, working with people in, what can be a financial hardship. So I like the idea, but I also said during the meeting that I just wanted to then get some feedback from both Brett and Dave about implications. Are either of you concerned about either debt limit or not being able to get projects done because it's $300,000 a year? So I'd be interested in hearing from Dave and Brett about that.
I guess I'll go first, Brett. I agree that staff time, whether it's Public Works or planning, they've got to figure out the allocation of cost, to figure that out. And then my staff has clerical time, putting those in and then collecting them, payment plans as it is. In regards to the extra 300,000, it basically means instead of having whatever it is, 25 property owners pay those costs, the entire city will pay those costs, and we issue 300,000 more in debt.
So when it comes to the projects, really it boils down to, how much the city wants to borrow for these projects. So if we want to borrow $300,000 more, then essentially nothing changes. If we say, hey, we can't borrow that much, then something will change. I will tell you, we're doing more in-house type work. We have a pulverizer that we're doing our own work with. And so we're seeing some efficiencies in that. And I think that's only going to get better. So I think we're doing more with less, if you will. So I think, it's tough to offset $300,000 if you were to cut that. However, if the borrowing limits accounted for that $300,000, I don't think you'd see much change.
And I think the only follow-up I would have is, and I've mentioned this before, I think I would hate for our sidewalk projects to take any hits on that, because I know it always seems like there's never quite enough money to repair sidewalks and that sort of thing. And just with the number of walkers and people who are with limited mobility, I guess I'd just like to always keep that in mind, that I wouldn't want that to be taken away from any of the funding.
Understood. And I think you'll find that it'll be easier to get these projects done. For example, this year it's too late to start assessing for new sidewalk projects. Whereas if we didn't have to do that, we would just go do it. We'd get it done, and there'd be no, hearings and things like that at council. It's just go get the project done within the sidewalk program that we have. So be it less red tape, if you will, to get them done.
Yeah, I think it could be argued that on some of the infills and street reconstructions, we've made pretty good progress over the year on adding sidewalks. And of course, on the new developments, the developer pays for the sidewalks to be put in. So it really, there's a few areas where we probably will still have to spend a fair amount of money to put sidewalks on those roads, but for the most part, we've on our collector roads, we do have the sidewalks in place most of the time on both sides. A couple years ago, we redid the policy. I think that gives us more flexibility for discretion as well.
Yep, it does.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you. I've been wanting to do this since the first day I was on council. So I will make a motion to recommend to council.
Second
By Lisa.
If I can make a couple comments
Yep.
yet. Number one, the way the ordinance is written, and by the way, the city attorney did review the ordinance language.
Hi, Rick.
This will take implemented once published. So that would mean that what we would normally assess in fall of '24 would not occur. If you want to have something different, you need to modify the language of the ordinance to that effect. Secondly, we've got this on a time-sensitive item because I wanted to place it onto council right away for the first reading. Personally, I'm hoping that council waives the first reading and goes to the second reading and approves it right away, for the simple reason that as we're developing the budget, I need to know, are we assessing or are we issuing debt? Then that's, there's no sense having Public Works doing the calculations of what the special assessments are if council says, yep, let's get rid of them.
Got it. All right, any other questions on this one? We've got a motion and a second on the table.
Just to
Yep.
clarify,
Yep.
Dave, just to clarify then, I thought that we already have done the assessments for the 2024 season, correct?
We
We
had issued notice that there's going to be a special assessment, but
But that would be for the 2025 projects, right?
No,
No.
no, so we issued a preliminary assessment letter and then did the hearing back in the spring.
Okay,
And so
got
we
it.
have
That's right.
we have not technically assessed yet, but we just gave them notice that this was potentially coming.
Yep, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we haven't borrowed the money for it yet, right?
well, it's not borrowed money per se, it's special assessment revenue that's being put to the construction fund, so it's not borrowing, correct?
Okay.
So
And did I hear you say we need an amendment to this?
If you do not want the 24 preliminary assessments to go forward.
And is that where the $307,000 comes from? Was that the assessment amount, or?
I'd have to, Brett is shaking his head, yes.
Yes, correct.
So
And that's for 2024.
So to summarize, if we were to amend this, if we weren't to amend this, we have to borrow an additional $307,000.
Well, I can find a way to do the 307,000 because there is available fund balance in the special assessment fund. That's a later topic for discussion. I wanted to have the policy done, as the mayor said.
Yeah, so I think what would happen is if we don't waive it, then this year the people would pay, and then the next year they wouldn't.
No, it's written right now that the people would not have to pay this year.
Oh, that's how it's written?
So, yes, so what was the preliminary notice in April would never occur, assume the way the ordinance is written. You'd have to amend the ordinance if you do not want that to happen.
So to your point, Ozzy, we'll have people in years past that have paid this and now won't benefit it. And if we were to amend the ordinance, we'd have people this year who'd pay it even though we just passed this, so there'd be even more angry.
No, nobody's going to pay this year. If I got I notice a special assessment in April of '24,
Yep.
assuming this goes forward, there will be no special assessment. I don't have to pay anything.
Right, but if we amended it, then there would be.
If you amended
That's
it,
what I meant,
correct,
sorry.
yep.
Yep.
And it's covered in my memo that's later on the agenda, but we're also making the assumption that the people who are on a payment plan for special assessments, this was for an assessment 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they're still going to have to make something on the payment plan. If that's something the council doesn't want to do, that's fine, we can change that, but this is the policy on whether you want special assessments or not.
All right, everybody got their brain wrapped around it? Go ahead, Ozzy.
That's a lot of money to come up with, to find all of a sudden $300 and some thousand.
I've got 800,000 fund balance.
All right, everybody got their mind wrapped around what the ordinance is? Yep.
Any questions on the ordinance real quick? I can briefly go through it if you'd like, or not, it's up to you.
I think everybody seems to be at least, they understand it.
Okay, all right.
Lisa?
I guess my only question is around the amendment. You know, Dave, from a finance department standpoint, is one going to be more complicated than the other as far as whether or not we just approve the ordinance as it is or make an amendment?
Well, I guess, what is your intention? Do you want the people to have to pay in the fall? Then we make an amendment. From my viewpoint, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for everybody because we don't have to do the calculations.
It's easier if we,
Leave it as it is.
okay, that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure I understood before I complicated things. All right, thank you.
All right, we do have a motion and a second on the table. Last chance for other questions or comments on the ordinance. Otherwise, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 And any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, Ozzy's a no. Or you an aye? Aye or a no? No. Ozzy's a no.
I'm opposed.
Yep, all right. All right, the ayes have it on that. So we'll recommend that one up to council. All right, next bit up we have is a resolution for adoption of revenue collection and write-off policy.
At the last meeting, you folks had approved the policy for AR write-offs and requested that a resolution be drafted. This is the language on that resolution. And I'm just going from memory, but I think the fiscal note says about 264,000, something like that, will be written off. But we had 100% bad debts reserved for that amount, so it doesn't affect us anything for the bottom line.
No, I think this makes sense. I mean, if records aren't kept beyond the 5-year point anyway, then
Yeah, how am I going to take it to
Yeah.
collection?
kind of chasing shadows on that one, so. All right, does anybody have any questions on this one, this resolution? We've talked about it a number of times here, so. All right, no other questions. Yep, go ahead, Ozzy.
So with this, are we gonna have a better handle on bad debt so it doesn't get this far out that we have to write all this money off?
Well, we have a new municipal judge. The rumor is that the municipal clerk may be retiring within the next 2 years or so. This will start cleaning up the old stuff, and we'll have to keep on top of them to make sure that they are working with the collection agencies.
Yeah, and a lot of it is debt and fines that have accumulated that, quite honestly, the court system really doesn't really have a way that we can collect it. And Rick and his team have been involved in these conversations, and there's some frequent flyers that know how to play the system, and we end up spending more time and money to collect it than we actually collect sometimes. So it's,
There's no sense in even doing it. Issuing a fine, they just gotta say, I'm not gonna pay it.
yeah. But, you know, those that pay it can at least sleep at night, I guess. It is frustrating, and it does take a fair amount of time, but I think once we clean it up, you know, we can do more periodic reviews and try to let it, so we can either write it off more often or hopefully collect it quicker. The longer it goes, the harder it is to collect. And as Dave said in the past, some of this, how'd you say that? Some of this debt is
If
how
you
old?
drink.
Some of the debt is old enough to legally drink.
Good stuff. All right, any other questions on this change in policy? All right, I would entertain a motion to recommend to council, not in a time-sensitive manner.
So moved.
Motion by Lisa, second by Greg. Any further questions on the policy? All right, all in favor, aye?
Okay.
Aye.
Are any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that one to council. Last resolution up is the Magnolia Springs Phase 2 approval.
Chris, did you want to start this one?
Well,
Okay, we'll let you.
yeah, so basically, we were approached by Ellen Homes to do Phase 2 of Magnolia Springs, and we always enter in agreements when we move forward on this, and I think this is similar to what we've done in the past.
Yeah, so we've got sort of a master development agreement, which is governing the development as a whole. But because they do it in phases, what we do is, it's like the first phase, this is identical almost to the agreement that was for the phase 1. But basically, when they start their next phase, they have more specifics about what the public improvements will look like. So this agreement basically just says, you're going to be bound by the master development agreement. We're releasing the next phases of the development, and you have to provide us a surety or a performance bond to cover the costs of the public improvements in the event that they don't follow through. That way the city can complete them. So this is just releasing the phase 2 lots for the development. They're still bound by all the other agreements in place, and like I said, this is almost identical to the phase 1 and phase 1A agreements that were executed last year.
Lisa?
So I always get confused because I was thinking it was coming to finance because they had to provide a letter of credit of some sort, but I don't see any dollars in here. So then I'm thinking, why didn't it just go to planning? So I'm confused about the process here.
Yes, so there's not a specific dollar amount. It's tied to a percentage of the estimate for the public improvements, so it's 120%. Honestly, we had the conversation about whether it should go to planning commission or finance, and I think it usually comes to finance, but so.
We
So
have
there-
not been consistent.
Okay.
So then you work out the dollar amounts necessary with planning?
Yes, so what happens is they'll submit an estimate with the city engineer. The city engineer will verify that, and then their letter of credit will be 120% of whatever that estimate is.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, then I wonder, hinging off of that, I wonder if this would be good to run it, at least the sequence of it through planning, and then once they have their assessment of what that cost would be, then we look at what the dollar value is going to be. Does that make sense, or?
I mean, whatever process the city wants to use. I mean, we typically don't put the amount, like the actual amount of the letter of credit in there. Like I said, we just tie it to 120%, which is in the agreement. So as long as, I guess, you're comfortable with that, we could then send it to planning to have them, I guess, give their blessing to move forward.
Hi, it's Chris here.
Yeah.
I normally, from what I was seeing before, this is normally done prior to and then signed, and then we collect the letter of credit afterwards, after, you know, everything is signed and in place. Is, at least that's how we did it on Stoughton trailers prior
Yes.
to, yeah,
Yep, that's the correct process that usually goes through.
yeah.
Okay. Do we have this do we have it written anywhere in a policy someplace that this is through? Because if we've been inconsistent with it in the past, I just want to make sure that we're consistently going through it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think which board it goes to is maybe what's been inconsistent, but from what I was looking through with all of the different, these different resolutions, it seems like they're all pretty much written the same. There was just a small thing changed on this particular one, but, if you guys want to see those going through Plan Commission instead of Finance in the future, I don't think either of us no, I don't think anybody cares if that's the direction you want me to go.
Sure. I don't think anybody's got any pushback as far as what's proposed in the resolution. I think it's more so just a procedural thing that we want to get it, we want to do it the same way each time.
Mm-hmm. So would you like to see these in the future, or should we just send them to Plan Commission only in the future?
I guess that's up to this committee, what they feel. Plan?
Okay.
Yeah, seems to be that way.
That can be our process moving forward then.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That being said, then we would entertain a motion to approve this to council. Recommend this to council. I've got that wrong every time almost. Motion by Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Patrick. Any other questions on the Phase 2 approvals? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll recommend that one to council. Dave will have to postpone the discussion on the special assessment fund on the fund balance bit.
I assumed that was going to happen. That's why I put it at the end of the
Yeah,
agenda.
I was kind of like, this is a lot to churn through, so maybe we could get it. Okay, we'll talk about it in the next time. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Greg,
Second.
second by Lisa. Any last questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.